Alright, here's the plan. This trope is stored in a secure vault in the 4th sub-basement of the prison complex, which for maximum security is also located on a moving train inside a submarine. We're gonna have to swim up through the tubes, drop down through their laser grid, make our way through the vents, hack the elevators, and bypass the giant unsecured spinning fan room, all while continuing to perform our ASMR live stream so no one suspects a thing. But don't worry, I'm putting together a team. Top of the line, the best people for the job. I've got a backer, a hacker, a top-notch safecracker, a techie, a rookie, a driver, a jacker, a fixer, a joker, a wild card, a straight, 3 aces, 2 queens, and a 90s queerbait. The brains, the muscle, the guy in the chair, the guy behind the chair, the guy on the couch, the guy on the floor because we ran out of space, and of course, the face. We'll be in and out in 15 minutes flat, 20 if the script runs long. Then we split the take and go our separate ways until the sequel in 3 years, the threequel in 6, and our one-scene cameo in a soft reboot a decade and a half later. That's just how things go when you're planning the perfect heist. The trope of the heist has a lot of moving parts and a lot of deceptively vibes-based categorization. Traditionally, a heist is a highly complex robbery arranged by a group of assorted criminals. Whether or not they're criminals before the heist is generally irrelevant because the heist itself is usually a crime, but most of them will already be experienced criminals in their specific fields of crime. Typically, a heist crew is composed of several experts, each responsible for only one small part of the heist, but the makeup of the crew varies a lot depending on the needs of the heist, which in turn depends on what they're stealing and where they're stealing it from. Arguably, the most important factor in the makeup of the heist crew is the place they're heisting, so we may as well start there. The target of the heist is usually a textbook MacGuffin, a largely interchangeable object defined by how much our protagonists want it. What makes this a heist is that the target is in a secure location, guarded by various convoluted security measures and/or environmental hazards. For brevity, let's call these secure locations puzzle boxes, because functionally that's what they are. A puzzle box is a nested series of defenses designed to make it extremely difficult or impossible to get out what's inside it while still allowing fairly convenient entrance for the small handful of people who are authorized. Usually at bare minimum, the puzzle box puts the target behind several locks, guarded by guards, and set to trip an alarm if it's removed. Beyond that, puzzle boxes are highly modular. You can have laser grids, piranha motes, sphinx riddles, guard rotations. You can even put a puzzle box on a moving vehicle if you want to make filming more expensive. But the thing that makes a puzzle box is that for every defense mechanism, there has to be a built-in way through. Not just for narrative convenience. The point of the puzzle box is it's supposed to keep everyone else out, but somebody's gotta be able to get in. If this is some eccentric billionaire's treasure vault, the billionaire's gotta be able to get in there. If the purpose was simply to keep everyone away at all costs, they could just seal the target in a 10-ton sphere of concrete and call it a day. But because the target needs to be accessible to someone, there's always gotta be a way in. And because no system is perfectly secure, there's also always going to be a way around. It's the job of the heist crew, and more specifically the heist planner, to figure out what those ways are. The planner, or the mastermind, is the only member of the heist crew who's generally non-negotiable. Someone has to be organizing this whole thing and getting everyone in the right places at the right time. If a puzzle box is a nested series of defenses and complications, the heist crew is basically a set of keys specifically chosen to bypass one or more of those defenses. This means the makeup of a heist crew is completely dependent on the needs of the puzzle box, because each role exists to solve one specific problem. If the target is guarded by sophisticated computer defenses, the crew will need a hacker. If there's a fancy party happening in the puzzle box, they're gonna need someone who can schmooze. A mobile puzzle box or an expected hot exit means the team will need a driver, and a bunch of security guards on site means they'll probably want someone who can punch. If a heist has a lot of equipment costs, they'll need a wealthy backer to foot the bill. Exceptionally narrow or convoluted points of entry might require an acrobat. If the person organizing the heist doesn't trust the crew, they might assign them a babysitter to keep them in line, and if the crew is on the more morally dubious side of things, they might specifically bring someone along to take the fall for them on their way out, etc., etc. There is no one correct makeup of a heist crew, and there is no one set of characters who can feature in a heist crew. There's pretty much no limitations on what kind of character can be in a heist, since a puzzle box can be arbitrarily complicated with any kind of defense. Every member of the heist crew is specifically chosen to solve at least one problem in the puzzle box, but essential to the concept and flavor of the heist is the idea that no one person can be solely responsible for the entire robbery. A solo expert cat burglar or dungeon crawler breaking in and out of a puzzle box all by themselves is very cool, but it's not exactly what we consider a heist. Heists are highly planned collaborative efforts, well-oiled machines of a bunch of experts all working together flawlessly. Half the fun is seeing a team of extremely competent people all playing their parts extremely well. Even if there's only one person doing the actual break-in part of the heist, they'll still have a support team playing guy in the chair to walk them through it. But of course, there's immediately a problem with this story structure, and its name is the unspoken plan guarantee. As a rule, if we see the characters say the plan out loud, the plan is guaranteed to subsequently go awry, because it's more interesting that way. But while some heists keep the audience completely in the dark about what exactly is going to happen and when, foundational to a lot of heists is the fact that we, the audience, get to see them planning the whole thing. It makes the writer's job harder, but it still gets a lot of airplay because seeing the plan is half the fun. But if we're told the plan can't play out exactly the way we've been told it will, since that would basically be making us watch the same thing twice. There are two ways around this. First, the story can conceal its curveballs. Something happens that the plan didn't account for, and now the crew has to think on their feet to get around it. It's very common for heists to experience at least one curveball, and they can range in scale from minor problems, like our blueprints were a little out of date and this door isn't where we thought it was, or this guard is allergic to eggs so they're not going to eat the sandwich we drugged for them, to major issues, like turns out one of our crew has a nemesis at this party and they will definitely recognize their face if they see them. The most calamitous curveball possible is usually that the target they're trying to heist isn't where they thought it was. Maybe someone else has stolen it first, or it was moved because security got suspicious, or it was never there and the whole thing was a trap. Whatever the scope, the curveball is an unexpected problem they didn't plan for, so now everyone's gonna have to scramble. In the worst case scenario, the scrambling isn't enough to save it. The heist fails and our heroes are gonna have to try again later under worse circumstances. The second approach is to conceal some of the plan. While the audience is privy to enough of the plan to know what our heroes want and several steps of how they're gonna get it, elements of the plan are concealed until they're revealed in a flashback later. Usually this reveal is how the characters escape a scenario that looks like certain defeat. The guard who has our crewmate at their mercy turns out to be an inside man. The mastermind was never actually in trouble, they just needed Mr. MacGuffin to monologue their evil crimes a little closer to their microphone. The cat burglar was always supposed to fail to grab the MacGuffin because their actual job was to plant something inside the vault instead. This kind of twist reveal is borderline mandatory to the execution of a successful heist. A fake-out failure turns out to be all part of the plan because what we didn't know is that they planned around the plan we already saw. A heist does need to be careful with how much information it conceals or saves for the final twist reveal. In some ways, a heist is very similar to a mystery, though the question is less who did it and more how are they going to get away with it. In a mystery, it's kind of gauche for the ultimate reveal to be that the whodunit was some completely unrelated third party the audience was given no reason to believe even existed. This twist is unsatisfying because instead of reframing the events of the story to reveal new meaning, it basically just tells us that there was a different, much more interesting story happening just off screen that the detective happened to miss, and everything we were told to pay attention to was straight up red herrings. In a heist, similar unspoken rules are in place. The parts of the plan that are hidden can be crucial to its success, but it probably shouldn't outweigh the entire rest of the plan we already watched. It's one thing to reveal that the safe cracker actually had a secret second job they were doing while cracking the safe, or that an employee of the villain was actually paid off as an inside man, but it would be kind of on another level to reveal that, like, the entire heist was actually a fake-out to distract from a second, even more complicated heist we never even heard about. It can be made to make sense, but it's a hard sell. There's also degrees of success in a heist. Unlike a lot of stock storylines, it's not a narratively foregone conclusion that our heroes will win and slip away effortlessly. Because a heist has so many moving parts, a lot of individual things can go wrong, and since the crew is usually so big, it's not a catastrophe if one or two people get caught or end up taking the fall for the gang. The stakes of a failed heist are usually legal trouble at worst, and that's only if our heroes don't manage to pull off a hot exit, aka tearing out in the getaway vehicle and simply outrunning all pursuit. That's an eminently fixable set of problems, plus if someone ends up in jail, the rest of the crew could always just heist them out again. Heists can also be broken up into multiple stages or stacked on top of each other in sequence. Maybe our heroes have to do a small heist to get the key to unlock something on the way to the bigger heist, or someone gets caught and now the crew is down a member, or the first heist flat out fails so they have to plan a new, harder heist to get what they're looking for. Heists can be retaliatory. Someone heisted us, we gotta heist them back. Heists can also be framing sequences for unrelated stories, or individual episodic adventures in a larger narrative. And while we're at it, a heist is a structure that can be applied to a lot of different plot purposes, not just theft. All a heist requires is that a group of diverse weirdos use their unique specialties to break into a puzzle box and get out again largely unscathed. While the traditional format is a robbery of some valuable MacGuffin or big pile of cash, a heist can also be used for an extraction if the MacGuffin in question happens to be a person, aka a kidnapping or a rescue mission depending on your point of view. These often happen when the puzzle box is or contains a prison. In some rarer cases, heists can be used to plant something instead of stealing it. It's got the exact same structure and the exact same stakes as a traditional heist, so even though it's the opposite of a theft, it still feels like it counts. And then there's the matter of flavoring. Heists are one of those tropes that suffer a little from their versatility. A heist can show up almost anywhere, which means it's a very well-trodden trope. Make a plan, assemble the crew, do the plan, handle the thing that goes wrong with the plan, reveal you actually planned for that in the secret second plan, get away, repeat. There's nothing wrong with a simple meal well made, but if you're gonna write a heist, it can't hurt to give it something that sets it apart from every other heist. When it comes to adding flavor to a heist, there are two main places the gimmick can go: the cast and the context. The gimmick cast is pretty self-explanatory. This is when the heist crew has some collective thing going on with them that sets them apart from a more typical gang. Maybe they're all former bad guys turning over a new leaf, or stage magicians, or they drive really fast cars in a furious manner. While this isn't uncommon, it does by definition limit the heists they can pull off, since their heisting methods are all going to center on their collective gimmick. If a crime can't involve helping the innocent, performing close-up magic, or driving a really fast car, it ain't gonna happen. In contrast, when the context has a gimmick, that means the heist is happening for a non-standard reason or in a non-standard setting. Espionage is a genre with a disproportionate amount of heisting in it, since arguably a super spy's whole deal is about getting into and out of heavily guarded places undetected. It's just that usually, instead of stealing money or treasure, they're snagging hard drives or encryption keys or foreign heads of state. These heists can have higher stakes than a simple crime, since spy versus spy shenanigans frequently have pretty hefty body counts, or the thing they're heisting might be, like, the only way to prevent World War III. While super spy stories do frequently center on lone operatives being extremely badass without much in the way of help, which, as discussed, doesn't really feel like a heist, they do also frequently operate in pairs or packs. Espionage-based heists vary a lot in tone and methodology depending on when they were made and what collective cultural anxieties the writer was grappling with at the time. But as a rule, they're a lot more gadget-heavy than more traditional heists. A super spy in trouble might not have to think their way out of a tight spot when they can instead rely on their problem solver 9000 to do it for them. Contextual gimmicks can also be a matter of environment. We're used to heists being set in fairly realistic worlds. Maybe the puzzle box will be a little higher tech than is plausible, and the resident hacker might operate more on Hollywood rules than on real computer security, but for the most part, a heist needs to be grounded in order for us to really appreciate the stakes and the value of the rewards. The appeal of the heist as a trope is that we get to see highly competent characters working together to solve problems, and that's easier for an audience to swallow if we already understand the scope of those problems. But there's no reason a heist can't happen in a sci-fi setting, or a high fantasy world, or cyberspace, or some similarly fantastical environment with wildly different rules. When the puzzle box is speculative or fantastical, it can take a little more work to ensure the audience understands its parameters, but once that work is done, the characters are solving the exact same problems in the exact same way as a normal heist. If anything, the familiarity of the heist as a trope can help ground the setting for an audience that might otherwise be a little out of their depth. There's a reason the first good D&D movie ever made prominently features a heist. Even a mainstream audience with no idea what an owlbear is can understand a story as universal as our heroes need to get inside a vault and it's gonna be really hard. As far as tropes go, the heist is a little bit unusual in how much it's willing to show its own moving parts. And I think that's a lot of its appeal. Obviously, half the fun is just seeing a crew of competent badasses being very good at what they do, but competency isn't enough to make a story automatically fun. In fact, in a lot of stories, character competency can sort of turn into an excuse for narrative shortcutting. If we know a character is good at what they do, the camera doesn't strictly need to focus on them doing it because the audience probably already assumes they're going to succeed. We don't need to see exactly how Batman beats up a room full of goons because we know that's a trivial problem for him to solve and he's not really in any trouble. It's easier from a writing standpoint to just cut away, overlay some punched out MP3s, and cut back to a bunch of unconscious mooks. Actually, Batman's a good example for a lot of this, since his entire thing is being really competent at everything he does. When Batman is investigating a crime, we frequently don't see him getting in the weeds of the investigation. He can just turn up on a rooftop and tell the commissioner exactly what happened and how, with the assumption that he figured it out off-screen. His competence means the camera cuts away from him doing any of the actual work because we assume this stuff is effortless for him. But a lot of the best scenes in the 2025 Batman movie were the moments where we did slow down and focus on him doing what we already know he's good at, or rather, what he should be good at. The problem with narrative shortcutting is it can turn character competence into an informed ability, a skill we're told they have that we never see them demonstrate. It can be especially bad if the only time we see them actually walking through the steps of what they're supposedly good at is when they're about to fail for plot reasons. If Worf loses every fight we see him in, we don't really believe he's a good fighter. Batman Man is the world's greatest detective, but do we actually feel that until we see him walking through a crime scene and picking up on all the little details faster and more accurately than the team of cops already there? He's an excellent fighter, but do we really buy that until we see how he tears through an endless parade of mooks? It's harder to write and choreograph a highly competent character doing what they're good at in any detail. For the same reason, it's hard to write a genius being brilliant. It's asking a lot of the writer, but that's what makes it so intriguing to watch when it's pulled off. The heist as a story format essentially makes the whole clock casing transparent. We have to see all the gears moving because we have to understand how they mesh together. We need to know exactly what the stakes are, what the timing is supposed to be, why it's so important that this guard is 3 minutes late on their scheduled rotation, why it could potentially derail everything because a guy put down his mug in the wrong place. We need to see all the little adjustments the characters are making to respond to the changing situation around them. The story can totally conceal backup plans and contingencies, but what the central characters are doing, how they're moving in relation to each other, every minute of every step of the plan has to be transparent or we'll lose sight of how things are working at all. A successful heist where we don't get to see the inner workings is basically a magic trick, which has its appeal for sure, but a lot of the joy of the heist is in seeing exactly how all the tricks are done. And when the heist does go wrong, it's usually not because a competent character inexplicably fails at the one thing we've been told they're good at, which is one of the more frustrating things that can happen with a supposed badass. In fact, not to derail for a minute, but arbitrary failure of something supposedly reliable is one of those bite-sized tropes that I can't unnotice, and it's really starting to piss me off. The car doesn't start until the last possible second, not for any specific reason, but because the chase scene is more tense that way. The shutdown button fails to shut down what it's supposed to. The expert sharpshooter misses. The powerhouse drops the heavy thing. The cure synthesized to treat an illness actually makes it worse. How many times have we seen a scenario where the designated smart character is 3 paragraphs into their technobabble explaining how they're about to accomplish a plot-necessary shenanigan, and when they try it, it just flat out fails, and they're like, I don't understand, my calculations were flawless. Sometimes we don't even get dignified with a retroactive explanation on why it didn't work. The problem is not that characters can be fallible or that things that seem reliable can fail. There's all sorts of explanations that can make failure make sense. Maybe the car didn't start because it had been sitting untouched in a driveway for 8 months. Maybe the faulty wiring in the facility has been referenced several times before the button simply doesn't button. Maybe the sharpshooter said they weren't sure they could make the shot. Maybe the cure was rushed and untested and that's why it went wrong. But these aren't arbitrary failures. They're telegraphed. An arbitrary failure stings because it happens to something that the audience has been reassured is reliable with no reason to think it can fail. It happens when an audience is taking the story at its word because they have no alternative. It's especially egregious with smart guy technobabble. When the smart guy is technobabbling, the audience can't check their work. Technobabble doesn't mean anything. It's just narrative shorthand for this guy is smart and therefore what they are saying is correct. The only thing the audience has to go on is what the story is telling them, and when we're told only that something should work and then it simply doesn't, that means the story just lied. It's a hand of the author thing. Sure, the characters need to face problems, but they don't need to face arbitrary failures that just feel like the writer reached in and said, nuh-uh. All kinds of things can go wrong without compromising the character's competence. And this feels like a golden rule when it comes to heist design. In a system with so many moving parts, there's no need to contrive a failure. Everyone can do their job exactly as well as they're supposed to and still run into trouble. It's clockwork, and clockwork can fail for all kinds of reasons without any of the individual gears being flawed. From a strategic standpoint, a heist is structurally a game where one side doesn't realize they're playing. The planner has to anticipate the moves of their opponent and the puzzle box's various defenses to move their crew into the most advantageous positions at the right time. But one primary defense of the target thereafter is usually a group of people who can always behave in unpredictable ways. The unspoken plan guarantee makes it all but inevitable that something won't go according to plan, but the nature of the game is that the entire puzzle box is full of X factors that can, by their nature, not go according to plan. It's not hard to complicate a heist, and it doesn't have to happen at the cost of the protagonist's character integrity, which means our characters can struggle through a complicated situation and potentially even lose without at any point feeling unqualified to be there in the first place. And that's a fantastic opportunity for characterization. One of the best ways to see what a character's made of is to challenge them, but from a writing standpoint, it's a lot easier to challenge a character by lowering their clock speed until they arbitrarily fail than it is to construct a scenario that actually forces them to the limits of their abilities. I think a lot of the reason heists are so fun is it's one of the only stock tropes that require the characters involved to legitimately be as good as the writer says they are. There's something mesmerizing about watching all the moving parts doing exactly what they're supposed to do exactly as well as they're supposed to do it. For a story format this fond of deception and twist reveals, it's kind of startling modeling how little a heist needs to actually lie to its audience. If it's doing its job, it can entertain us by simply showing us the truth. Those dastardly villains got away with my so yeah, but I'll show 'em, I'll heist it right back, and then we'll see who's really so yeah. Arm yourself because no one else here will save you. The odds will betray you, and I will replace you. You can't deny the prize, it may never fulfill you. It longs to kill you. Are you willing to die? The coldest blood runs through my veins. You know my name.